This is Michael Popok, Legal AF After Dark. Rudy Giuliani, a.k.a. unindicted co-conspirator number 1 in the District of Columbia. Indicted co-conspirator number whoever, 15 in Georgia, has his own legal problems, if you can believe it, stemming from his role in trying to interfere with elections and abuse people and try to convince them to commit fraud when they weren't. He attacked Ruby Freeman and Shaye, 2 lowly paid election workers in Georgia who were just doing their job counting votes. He defamed them so mercilessly that he's already lost the first half of the trial, a trial on damages that starts on December 15th. Karen Friedman Agnifilo and me, my co-anchors on Legal AF midweek, break it all down for you. Here's a listen. Rudy Giuliani's not going to be doing any of that. He's not going to have any money to do any of that because he's going to lose a lot in this defamation case that's going to trial in December. Ruby Freeman and Shaye settled out with some other right-wing media people like OAN and others, leaving Rudy Giuliani, who defamed and doxed them mercilessly, as did Donald Trump, claiming that they committed voter fraud. The running thematic there for the Trump organization and the campaign and their lawyers like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani was that in Fulton County, which is 80% Democrat, that's the place where you commit fraud, where it's 80% Democrat, right? And in the vote counting in Atlanta, when Ruby Freeman and Shaye with a low-paid or no-paid job of counting votes, doing their job, counting ballots, putting them into optical readers, taking discarded ballots, putting them into locked boxes under their desk, and doing it all over again, rinse and repeat. No, to Donald Trump, who mentioned it during his perfect phone call to Brad Raffensperger and to Rudy Giuliani on his podcast, on Fox News, and anyone else who would listen. This was part of a voter fraud because they were taking fake ballots for Biden ballots, and stuffing the ballot box electronically or otherwise with votes that got dropped off in suitcases and briefcases that were from China, that whatever else were made up stuff, that on a thumb drive that Ruby Freeman and Shaye were passing back and forth to each other and taking votes from under the table and putting them into the machine, which is true if you run the video backwards, which is what they did, because the ballots were going from the table to the box, not the other way around. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation did a full investigation of this, as did the Secretary of State's investigative branch, and completely cleared Ruby Freeman and Shaye of any voter fraud whatsoever. The thumb drive was a breath mint that was being passed between the two of them, and there was nothing untoward or improper or fraudulent done by them at all. They're heroes, they're patriots doing their civic duty, and we know it because it was all caught on film, because there's cameras. And unlike Donald Trump, who tried to drown, bury, burn his video cameras at Mar-a-Lago to hide his misdeeds, these video clips actually exist and were reviewed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. That didn't stop Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump, despite that, from continuing to claim that they committed voter fraud. It got so bad that they actually, at least 3 of the co-conspirators in Georgia went after Ruby Freeman, including a woman named Cutie, who used to be a stylist for Kanye West, and Black Voices for Trump leader Willie Floyd, and Ray Smith, a reverend, who cornered Ruby Freeman, even bringing her to a police station to try to coerce her to fraudulently admit to voter fraud. And that's part of the conspiracy of which Donald Trump is also tagged in Georgia, with Ruby Freeman at the center. But Ruby Freeman and Shaye have a civil day in court because they were doxxed, because they were almost attacked physically. They had to move from their house for protection. And so they sued Rudy Giuliani. And Rudy Giuliani did so many things wrong. And you'd almost have to think that Rudy never was a member of the bar. That he was, it would make a lot more sense if this was like My Cousin Vinny instead of My Cousin Rudy, where he didn't know the rules and the procedures. He'd never been in federal court before. I've never been in the big city before. I don't know how these things work.
But he has a lawyer.
Well, even if he didn't have a lawyer, Rudy Giuliani was a lawyer for 40 years in the federal court practice. So how you are so terrible at being a participant in the process that you completely flout the authority of the judge. You refuse to provide any of the documents that you're required to provide. You refuse to participate in discovery process. You get sanctioned 3 times for attorney's fees for over $500,000. And then when the judge has had enough, Rudy, you lose your ability to defend the case and you get a judgment against you on liability.
But how does his lawyer allow it to get to that point? If this was your client.
He had more than one lawyer. He's got an out of control client that's not, I mean, unless you bail out, which, some tried to, if your client is his own worst enemy, there's not much you can do other than to say, it wasn't me, judge, don't sanction me, sanction him.
But that's not what happened today. When he was supposed to show up in court today and he didn't show up, and the judge was like, what the heck? You were supposed to be here. And the lawyer was like, oh, that was me. That wasn't him.
Well, that one, he took the bullet. But how we got where we are, where lawyers are getting screamed at by the federal judge. This federal judge has been more than patient. Her orders have been violated 6 times by Rudy Giuliani, important ones. And it's gotten so bad that even when she gave him the last chance to turn over his financial records about his revenue from his podcast, how much money he makes, so that the jury has an idea for punitive damages, how much to award, if they're going to award any at all, he missed the deadline to do that. And the judge says, if you don't give this information within a week's time, I am going to give an instruction, an adverse inference instruction to the future jury that tells them that as a matter of law, they are instructed to conclude that Rudy Giuliani is trying to hide his money, to suppress his net worth, sound familiar, except it goes the other way for Trump, in order to avoid punitive damages, and for good measure, that he's not allowed to talk at all about anything related to the liability case. He just has to stand there and take it for damages only. Now, Rudy, hearing all of that, decided, well, my best place to avoid a huge award is with a judge. So he argued at the last minute, there's no jury involved here, even though the judge has already decided that there's going to be a jury, and that there's no jury. We're only down to damages. That's a judge thing, not a jury thing. And the judge says, well, you may be right in certain circumstances, but I'm the trier of fact, and I want help, and I want a jury to handle the fact finding related to the damage amount. And so we're having a jury trial. See you guys on whatever day this was, yesterday or today, in my courtroom. And she has ordered him to be there for every event in the case since, and he didn't show up today. And what happened with the judge, KFA?
The judge got very upset, and basically, it was head scratcher how Giuliani did not show up for this, and how he didn't, he wasn't here to agree to the things that he's supposed to agree on, because the trial's starting next week. And, look, this is fascinating to me, because, the amount of incompetence that is going on, in addition to trying to, I don't even know what the strategy is. I can't wrap my head around this, and maybe it's because Rudy Giuliani was such a big figure, larger than life figure in New York for years and years and years. I just can't believe that he's gone from being, he was America's mayor after 9/11, right? In addition to being a United States attorney for the Southern District of New York, some would say the most prestigious U.S. attorney's office in the country. He's gone from that to to having the press conference outside of the Four Seasons, whatever that place was, like a
landscaping and gravel.
Landscaping, yeah. Instead of the Four Seasons, with another one where he has that hair dye, dripping down his face. And now he's in this case. This can't be a strategy, right? He's just screwing up at every single turn. He's not doing anything he's supposed to be doing. And now, so the latest one was, he asked that there not be a jury, right? He said, I want just a bench trial, not a jury trial, because otherwise, the jury instruction that you're going to read is going to say that, the jury's only to consider damages because he's already been sanctioned. He's already been found a default judgment as a sanction, not even a default judgment the way the way, there's no sort of like the way Judge Engoron did in the Trump case, saying, I've looked at all the papers and I think, the plaintiff wins on the papers, basically the papers and all the record before me. This isn't a substantive win. This is a win because of all of the things you just said that he has not done. And, it's this willful discovery misconduct. And, he said basically that would prejudice me in front of a jury. So I just wanted a judge trial. And the judge basically said, first of all, the Seventh Amendment guarantees the right to a jury trial in a civil case. And why should the plaintiff lose that right under these circumstances? That would be extremely unfair. And P.S., Rudy Giuliani, when we went over the jury charges, you didn't even object to that one. So now you're objecting, like at the 11th hour. It's like, it just seems like his lawyer isn't paying attention and he is just not getting involved at all in this case. But to what end? I mean, I just don't understand, because he's going to for sure be found 100% liable. And the damages are going to be, the two most compelling witnesses in the Jack Smith cases are going to be Ruby Freeman and Shaye, right? They are, when they testify about what has happened to them, there's not going to be a dry eye in the house. And the same thing is going to go for the Giuliani trial, right? And all of the things that Giuliani said and did about him. And, I loved, the one thing I did love that I wrote down that Beryl Howell wrote. He said, the irony of this assertion must be highlighted given the many opportunities Giuliani was afforded to comply with his discovery obligations, but to no avail, and the further opportunities Giuliani was afforded to be heard on any adverse instructions to be given to the jury, but he consented to those instructions, and Giuliani's own discovery misconduct necessitated the entry of default judgment against him, and this court will not reward him for conduct that has already resulted in significant prejudice to the plaintiffs. I mean, it's like I just love the way he phrased that. And look, he only has himself to blame, and and then he doesn't show up today. I mean, I just, the whole thing makes no sense to me. How this is going to go down and why this is happening. And, the other question we were talking about, well, I have a few questions about the trial for you, the civil lawyer, because I love learning from you. Is, first of all, it's going to be a jury of 8 people. Why 8, not 12, right? How do you get the number of jurors in a civil case? And does it have to be unanimous? And I'd love to hear, because I love learning from you in these circumstances. I think you're
okay,
on
so
mute.
we're doing jury. All right. So you need between 6 and 12, and usually the parties, whatever the standard practice is for that courtroom. I've never done 8. I've done 6. I've done 9, and I've done 12. 8's an odd number, not literally. It's an even number that happens to be odd. Generally, it comes from court practice or consultation with the lawyers that are involved about how many that they want. It has to be over 6. Usually it's under 12. 8's a weird number. You read 8 because 8, 8. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So it's 8. And in
So it's
terms
not
of
statutory, it's like agreed upon?
Well, it's statutory between the numbers of 6 and 12, and then you can sort of pick what you want in between there and satisfy the requirements. For criminal, it's generally unanimous. For federal civil, the last time I did a federal civil, I needed I don't think it's a majority. I think you have to get, when we go to the next, when you're chatting through the next one, I'll double check about the issue of a unanimity for it. Because I might be confusing with the state requirement. Well, but that's why legal AF is great. I'll figure it out and I will report it. So we'll follow that trial closely. It's going to be tens of millions of dollars awarded and punitive damages by this jury against Rudy Giuliani. And as you and I joked before the show, I think Ruby Freeman and Shaye would like living on the Upper East Side of New York in a condo that Rudy used to own, or in Florida near Mar-a-Lago. I think those are both beautiful places for that.
One question
live.
One question you and I talked about beforehand, and I'd love to hear your thoughts because I don't understand it, is why they didn't sue Donald Trump. Why did they just sue Giuliani? I even asked ahead of time. I was like, did I miss
Yeah.
it? Did I forget what happened to it? Because logically, to not sue, when you read what happened to them and who did it, it was very much Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. It wasn't just Rudy Giuliani. So why they didn't sue Trump, I don't get it.
I think these lawyers
And Trump's got money.
I think these lawyers made a tactical decision that they did not want to go through. Look, we're 3 years into an immunity decision, 2.5 years into an immunity decision in D.C. Court of Appeals about whether Donald Trump can have civil liability to the outer boundaries of his office under the KKK Act for the injuries to the Capitol Police, Metro Police, and to the elected officials that were, running for their lives during Jan 6th. And the answer just got answered last week. That issue got raised in the E. Jean Carroll case as well, and that just got decided, or sort of decided, half decided recently. And so I think this is not having spoken to these lawyers, but these lawyers looking around, having sued the media company and gotten a quick settlement, and having sued Rudy, coming right off of, that issue of whether Donald Trump's statements are inside his scope or color of his authority, or he's campaigner in chief and he's outside. They just, they're doing this kind of they're doing this pro bono, maybe certainly a contingency fee. And, you have to pick your battles. And the battle that they didn't want is to fight through Donald Trump and all the immunity issues and Donald Trump's bullshit, making a circus, as we've seen what bigger circus? He didn't even go to E. Jean Carroll and it was a circus. He went to the civil fraud case and it was like the circus like I've never seen as a child. And so, you know what they've avoided in DC? They've avoided the circus, and they got Rudy off by himself for him to crap his own diaper, which is all he's done since he's been a defendant in the case, and he's already lost the case, and they haven't had to go through the Trump bullshit. I think if that is the reason, they didn't forget. It's not because they forgot. They didn't go, who are we missing here? Somebody made a decision in consultation with the client that they didn't want to pick the fight with Donald Trump and have to be the firm to have to prove whether he has immunity or not for that particular set of actions, when there are all these other low-hanging fruit they could go after. That's the only explanation, because the lawyers are very, very good, and the firms are very, very good.
I hope that's the explanation. Yeah, no, I hope that's the explanation.
Well, what else could it be? What else?
The other thing it could be, to be honest, is, now that I represent clients and I know what goes into the thinking of certain clients, I wonder whether they were afraid. Because when you go after Donald Trump, look what he's done. Look at how he doubles down. Look at why there's an E. Jean Carroll too. Look at what he does to people. He's the bully in chief, and they got death threats. Those were real. And I just hope he didn't silence them and make it so that they were actually too afraid to bring the case against him. That would be a shame.
Yeah, I don't. Knowing that Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, which is a major firm out of New York, it is not going to be afraid of Donald Trump. Now, maybe they're
not the lawyers, not the lawyers. I'm talking about the plaintiffs.
Oh, you're talking about Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss?
Yes. I'm not talking about the lawyers. Of course, the lawyers aren't afraid. I'm saying, I wonder if the plaintiffs were like, I can't go through that again. I can't go through that again.
Well, the point you're making is a good one, which is this is a client decision ultimately. So whether the law firm decided, look, the path of least resistance for us to get you the money and connect you to money is to go after people not named Donald Trump. But it also could have been, I don't want to sue Donald Trump. I already almost lost my house. I had to have law enforcement sitting outside my house, and I don't need Trump world, although, Rudy is a part of Trump world, but not directly taking on the cult leader. I like that. I think that's a very good potential analysis. One day, maybe we'll have the lawyers for Wilkie Farr on the show and we can ask them. Well, there's an example of what we do twice a week on the MeidasTouch Network. It's the only place we do it. Legal AF. Lawyers talking about legal issues involving politics that know what they're talking about. How unique. That's what we do on Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the MeidasTouch Network, on Legal AF, and then in hot takes in between that catch you up on current events at that same intersection. If you like that kind of debate, you're going to love the long format show, Legal AF. If you know what I'm talking about, you know who we are, welcome back. We appreciate you. Send that clip to a friend, family, or somebody in your life and ask them to join the audience. If you have no idea what I'm talking about or who I am, I'm Michael Popok. That was Legal AF. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.